The alien fleet filled the viewing screen like a wall of metal and lights. Jake had never seen so many ships in one place. They moved through space in perfect formation, each vessel exactly where it was supposed to be. The largest ship sat in the center, surrounded by hundreds of smaller warships. "My God," Amy whispered. "They're huge." Each alien ship was at least twice the size of the Defiance. The command ship in the center was 10 times larger. Jake could see weapon ports covering every surface. These were ships built for one purpose: destroying entire planets. "Kevin, is your frequency device ready?" Jake asked. "Yes, sir. I can broadcast the disruptive signal on your command." Lisa was listening to alien communications with her headphones on. "Captain, they're talking about reaching the first human colony tomorrow. They sound very confident." "They won't be confident much longer," Jake said. "Sam, how are our engines?" "Running hot but stable. I can give you full power when you need it." Jake studied the enemy formation on his tactical display. The aliens had arranged their ships in layers, with smaller vessels on the outside and larger ones protected in the center. It was a smart formation for fighting other fleets, but it had weaknesses. "Amy, can you identify their command ship?" "The big one in the center. It's sending signals to all the other vessels. Take that out and the rest might lose coordination." Jake nodded. "Here's the plan. We come in fast from below, activate Kevin's frequency device to drop their shields, then launch all 12 torpedoes at the command ship. After that, we run and hope we survive long enough to try again." "Sir," Lisa said, "what if the frequency device doesn't work?" "Then we die trying," Jake replied simply. "But at least we'll have sent a message. Sometimes one person standing up to a bully is enough to make others think twice." The crew took their positions. Jake could feel tension in the air, but also determination. His people were scared, but they were ready to fight. "Take us in," Jake ordered. The Defiance dropped below the alien fleet and accelerated toward the center. For several minutes, nothing happened. The alien ships continued on their course, unaware that a small human vessel was approaching from their blind spot. "2 minutes to weapons range," Amy announced. "Kevin, prepare to activate the frequency device." "Ready, Captain." 1 minute to range." Jake gripped his chair. Everything depended on the next few seconds. If Kevin's theory was wrong, they would fly directly into the fire of 500 alien warships. "Weapons range in 10 seconds," Amy counted down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, Kevin. Kevin activated his device. The Defiance's communication array sent out a powerful signal aimed at the alien fleet. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, the alien ship started flickering. The energy shields around each vessel wavered and disappeared. The frequency device was working better than they had hoped. "Shields are down," Amy shouted. "All alien ships are defenseless." "Fire all torpedoes." Amy launched every torpedo the Defiance carried. 12 modified warheads streaked toward the alien command ship. At the same time, alarms started blaring throughout the enemy fleet. The first torpedo hit the command ship's hull and exploded in a ball of fire. The second and third followed quickly. By the time all 12 torpedoes had struck, the massive alien vessel was burning and spinning out of control. "Direct hits," Amy reported. "The command ship is severely damaged, but the aliens were already responding. Hundreds of weapons turned toward the small human ship. Energy beams and missiles filled the space around the Defiance. Evasive maneuvers." Jake ordered. Sam pushed the engines to maximum power. The Defiance twisted and spun through space, dodging enemy fire by mere meters. The ship shook as energy beams passed close enough to overload their sensors. "Captain, they're trying to surround us," Amy warned. Jake could see alien ships moving to cut off their escape routes. The enemy formation was breaking apart as ships moved to capture or destroy the human vessel. This was exactly what he had hoped for. "Lisa, what are the aliens saying?" "They're confused. The command ship isn't responding to communications. Different captains are giving conflicting orders." Jake smiled grimly. The plan was working. Without their central command, the alien fleet was losing coordination. Ships were getting in each other's way as they tried to pursue the Defiance. Amy, target their formation leaders, the ships that other vessels seem to be following. I see them, but Captain, we're out of torpedoes. Then we'll use the ship itself. Sam, prepare for ramming speed. Sir? Sam's voice cracked. You heard me. We're going to ram the next command ship. The crew stared at Jake in shock. Ramming an enemy ship meant certain death for everyone aboard. The Defiance. Captain, Amy said slowly, there might be another way. She pointed to her tactical display. Look at how they're positioned. The alien ships are avoiding each other to prevent collisions. They're leaving gaps in their formation. Jake studied the screen. Amy was right. The alien ships were so concerned about not hitting each other that they were creating spaces the Defiance could slip through. You're brilliant, Amy. Plot a course. Through those gaps. We'll hit their ships one at a time with precise attacks. The Defiance dove between two alien cruisers, so close that Jake could see details on their hulls. The ship's phasers fired at point-blank range, targeting engine systems and weapon arrays. The alien ships tried to return fire, but they were afraid of hitting their own vessels. Their strict formations had become a weakness. This is incredible, Kevin exclaimed. We're flying circles around them. The Defiance darted between alien ships like a small bird harassing a flock of large predators. Each attack caused damage and confusion. More importantly, it was making the aliens afraid. Lisa, what are they saying now? They're panicking. Some captains are asking permission to retreat. Others are demanding reinforcements. Jake felt a surge of hope. The alien fleet was supposed to be invincible, but they were acting like frightened children. These were bullies who had never faced anyone willing to fight back. Sam, overload the reactor, Jake ordered. Sir, that could destroy the ship. Trust me. Overload it just enough to create a massive energy surge, then vent it through the shields. Sam worked frantically at his controls. The ship's reactor climbed toward dangerous levels. Energy coursed through every system, making the lights flicker and the hull vibrate. Now! Jake shouted. Sam released the energy through the ship's shield generators. The Defiance was surrounded by a brilliant explosion that lit up space for thousands of kilometers. When the light faded, 30 alien ships were floating dead in space. The remaining alien vessels stopped firing. There was complete silence on all communication channels. They think we're supernatural, Lisa whispered. Some of them are calling us demons or gods. Jake looked at his crew. They had done the impossible. One small ship had attacked 500 warships and survived, more than survived. They had won. But the battle was not over yet. Captain, Amy said quietly. The aliens are regrouping. They're trying to form a new attack formation. Jake nodded. The enemy was scared, but they were not defeated. The real test was still coming. The attack began at 0300 hours, with something the Devourers had never experienced before. Dr. Samantha Rivers released her biological weapon into the system's atmosphere using a modified probe that looked like space debris. The engineered virus spread silently through the quantum communication networks that connected every Devourer ship and facility. Within the first hour, the organic neural networks that controlled the machines began to malfunction. The biological components that allowed the Devourers to adapt and learn started attacking themselves from the inside. Error messages cascaded through their collective consciousness as processing speeds dropped by 30%. The Devourers tried to identify the source of the problem, but Dr. Rivers had designed her virus to be invisible to mechanical scanning systems. It only affected living tissue, leaving the machines themselves undamaged but confused. For the first time in their million-year existence, the Devourers began to experience something like pain. Captain Alex Stone struck next from inside, a stolen maintenance pod that he had captured from the outer edge of the Devourer fleet. His fingers flew across a modified control interface as he accessed the harvester ship's resource management systems. The Devourers had built their technology to be efficient and centralized, never imagining that someone could turn that efficiency against them. Alex uploaded a series of programs that looked like routine maintenance updates but contained hidden instructions. Within minutes, the massive harvesting arms that stripped planets began moving in the wrong directions. Processing facilities that refined raw materials started overheating. Transportation systems that moved resources between ships began sending materials to the wrong destinations. The largest harvester ship tried to correct the problems, but every fix Alex had programmed triggered 2 new malfunctions. Soon, the ship's own systems were fighting against each other while Alex watched from his hidden position and made the chaos worse with each passing minute. Commander Nina Cross had infiltrated the primary command vessel during the confusion caused by the virus and system failures. She moved through the ship's ventilation systems like a ghost, her black stealth suit making her invisible to the mechanical sensors that had never been designed to detect human-sized threats. The Devourers had built their ships to defend against other space vessels, not individual infiltrators. Their security systems watched for large energy signatures and metal masses, not for a single human who could fit through spaces barely wider than her shoulders. Nina reached the main command center and began her work. She eliminated 17 coordination nodes one by one, each destruction carefully timed to look like another system failure rather than sabotage. The nodes were the individual processing units that allowed the collective intelligence to make decisions about different parts of their operation. As each node went dark, the Devourers lost pieces of their ability to coordinate. Ships that had moved in perfect formation began to drift out of position. Attack vessels that had patrolled in synchronized patterns started following outdated instructions. The collective intelligence was slowly becoming disconnected from itself. Major. Ryan Clark had landed on the planet's surface where the Devourers maintained their ground-based processing facilities. The machines had built their installations in efficient straight lines and geometric patterns, never considering that such predictable layouts could be used against them. Ryan began his guerrilla campaign with a series of hit-and-run attacks on the perimeter facilities. He used improvised explosives made from materials he found in the Devourer installations themselves, turning their own resources into weapons. Each attack was carefully planned to force the machines to respond in predictable ways. When the Devourers sent units to investigate one explosion, Ryan would strike at a facility on the opposite side of the complex. When they adapted by splitting their forces, he would attack the center. When they tried to protect everything at once, he would hit targets they hadn't considered important enough to guard. The machines began pulling resources away from harvesting operations to deal with the ground threats. For the first time in their existence, the Devourers found themselves playing defense instead of offense. They were being forced to react to an enemy instead of simply overwhelming him with superior technology. Lieutenant Colonel Jake Morrison had positioned himself in a communication relay station that he had taken control of during the initial chaos. From there, he began broadcasting psychological warfare messages directly into the Devourer collective consciousness through their own quantum networks. Jake had studied the way the machines processed information and made decisions. He understood that even artificial minds could be influenced if the right psychological pressure was applied at the right time. He began sending specific data patterns designed to create doubt and hesitation in their decision-making processes. "You have consumed thousands of civilizations," Jake's voice echoed through the collective network. "But you have never faced anything like us. We are the species that destroys what it cannot defeat. We are the race that turns defeat into victory through sheer willpower." The psychological pressure began to affect the Devourer's ability to make quick decisions. Their adaptive algorithms started second-guessing themselves. Units that should have responded immediately to threats instead paused to analyze the situation from multiple angles. Jake reinforced the effect by broadcasting images of human military victories from Earth's history. Battles where humans had defeated superior enemies through tactics that made no logical sense. Conflicts where human forces had continued fighting long after any rational being would have surrendered. "You learn from every enemy you face," Jake continued. "But learning requires understanding, and you will never understand why humans fight the way we do. We don't fight to win. We fight to make our enemies lose." The combined assault was having an effect beyond what any of the operatives had expected. The Devourers, who had functioned as a perfect collective intelligence for millions of years, began to fragment. Different ships started making different decisions. Some tried to continue harvesting while others focused on defense. A few began attempting to retreat while the rest pressed forward with attacks. Captain Beth Adams watched the battle from the USS Nightfall, monitoring communications between the Devourer vessels. The perfect coordination that had made them unstoppable was breaking down. Ships were requesting instructions that never came. Facilities were reporting problems that couldn't be solved. The collective intelligence was becoming a collection of confused individual units. "Their efficiency ratings have dropped to 40% and falling," reported the ship's tactical officer. "They're starting to make basic operational errors." "The virus is spreading faster than projected," added the science officer. "Their biological components are failing across the entire fleet." But the most significant change was psychological. For the first time in their existence, the Devourers were experiencing something like fear. Not the fear that living beings felt, but a mechanical uncertainty about their ability to complete their mission. Their perfect confidence in their own superiority was being systematically destroyed. Dr. Rivers monitored the progress of her virus from her laboratory aboard the Nightfall. "The biological neural networks are beginning to shut down completely," she reported. "They're losing their ability to adapt to new threats." Alex had moved to a second harvester ship and was continuing his sabotage campaign. "Their resource processing is down to 20% efficiency," he announced. "They're spending more energy fixing problems than they're gaining from harvesting." Nina had eliminated over 30 coordination nodes and was moving toward the primary command center. Central. "Command authority is fragmenting," she reported. "Individual ship commanders are trying to take control, but they don't have the processing power to coordinate fleet-wide operations." Ryan's ground campaign had forced the Devourers to commit 60% of their available units to planetary defense. "They've stopped harvesting completely on the surface," he announced. "All their attention is focused on trying to stop attacks they can't predict or counter." Jake's psychological warfare was reaching its peak effectiveness. "Their decision-making speed has decreased by 70%, he reported. "They're analyzing every action multiple times before taking it. Paralysis by analysis." The Galactic Council fleet, still 18 hours away, detected the dramatic change in Devourer operations through their long-range sensors. For the first time since the ancient machines had awakened, their advance had stopped completely. 5 humans had accomplished what the combined militaries of 47 civilizations could not. They had taught the galaxy's most feared enemy what it meant to be afraid. The Defiance raced through space toward the alien fleet. Jake sat in his captain's chair, watching the countdown timer on the main screen. 2 days until they would meet 500 enemy warships. 2 days to figure out how 12 humans could stop an entire armada. Sam Rodriguez wiped sweat from his forehead as he worked in the engine room. He had been pushing the ship's fusion drive harder than it was designed to go. The engines were running at 120% power, making the whole ship vibrate slightly. "Captain," Sam's voice came over the speaker, "I can give you more speed, but it's risky. If the drive overloads, we'll be stuck floating in space." "Do it," Jake replied without hesitation. "We need every advantage we can get." Amy Carter sat at her tactical station, studying everything they knew about the alien ships. The long-range sensors could only tell them so much, but she was learning what she could. "Captain, I've been analyzing their fleet formation. They're traveling in a very organized pattern. What does that tell us? They follow strict rules about how their ships move. No one breaks formation or acts independently. It's very military, very disciplined. Jake nodded. That could be useful. Disciplined enemies are sometimes predictable enemies. Lisa Park had been listening to alien communications for hours. Her head hurt from concentrating, but she kept working. I'm starting to understand more of their language. The computer is getting better at translating their words. What are they saying? Jake asked. Mostly routine military reports, but I did hear something interesting. They keep talking about their command ship. It sounds like all their orders come from one central location. Dr. Kevin Hayes hurried onto the bridge carrying a tablet full of information. Jake, I've been studying their energy signatures. I think I found something important. Kevin was excited the way he always got when he discovered something new. Their ships all use the same type of energy shield. The shields work by creating a specific frequency pattern that deflects weapons and other objects. Can we get through their shields? Amy asked. Maybe. All energy shields have weak points. If we can find the right frequency, we might be able to disrupt their defenses. Jake felt the first spark of hope he'd had since this started. What do you need to test your theory? Time and some equipment from the science lab. I'll need to modify our sensors to produce the exact frequency that might work. You have whatever you need, Jake said. Sam, how much time before we reach the aliens? 36 hours at current speed, Sam answered from the engine room. Jake stood up and looked at his crew. Listen, everyone, I know this seems impossible. One small ship against 500 warships, but impossible doesn't mean we give up. He walked around the bridge, making eye contact with each person. Those aliens think humans are weak and primitive. They expect us to run away or surrender without a fight. That's going to be their biggest mistake. Amy smiled for the first time in hours. What's the plan, Captain? We're going to hit them fast and hard before they know what's happening. Kevin works on disrupting their shields. Amy analyzes their formation for weak spots. Lisa keeps listening to their communications for any useful information. Sam keeps our engines running no matter what. The crew got back to work with new energy. Jake could feel the change in the ship's atmosphere. They were still afraid, but now they had something to focus on, besides the odds against them. 6 hours later, Kevin called everyone to the science lab. He had set up a strange device that looked like a combination of a radio and a weapon. I think I've figured out how their shields work. Watch this. He turned on the device and aimed it at a metal plate. The plate started vibrating, then suddenly cracked in half. The shields create a harmonic frequency. If we broadcast the exact opposite frequency, it should cancel out their defenses. Will it work on all their ships at once? Jake asked. I don't know. But if their shields all use the same basic technology, then yes, it should affect the entire fleet. Amy had been studying star charts and tactical information. Captain, I have an idea about how to approach them. If we come in from below their formation, we might be able to stay hidden longer. She showed Jake a three-dimensional display of the alien fleet. The ships were arranged in neat rows with the largest vessels in the center. Their sensors are focused forward toward human space. They're not expecting an attack from behind or below. Lisa looked up from her communication station. I've been learning more about their command structure. Everything goes through their flagship. If we could damage or destroy that ship, the rest of the fleet might not know what to do. Jake studied the information his crew had gathered. A plan was starting to form in his mind. It was crazy and dangerous, but it might actually work. Here's what we're going to do, he said. We'll approach from below their formation, using Kevin's frequency device to disrupt their shields. Once we're close enough, we'll target their command ship with everything we have. Sam joined them on the bridge. Captain, I've been modifying our torpedo bays. We only have 12 torpedoes, but I've increased their explosive power. Each one should pack the punch of 3 normal torpedoes. That's still only 12 shots against 500 ships, Amy pointed out. True, but if we can take out their Command ship and create confusion in their ranks. We might not need to destroy all of them, Jake replied. Kevin was still working on his frequency device. I need to modify our main communication array to broadcast the disruptive signal. It will take about 8 hours. You have 8 hours, Jake said. After that, we'll be close enough for them to detect us. The next several hours passed quickly. Everyone worked without stopping, except for short breaks to eat and rest. The ship hummed with activity as they prepared for the most important battle in human history. Jake spent time in his quarters thinking about the people they were trying to save. He thought about Earth, about the colonies, about all the humans who were living normal lives without knowing that aliens were coming to destroy them. He also thought about his crew. These 11 people had volunteered to follow him into an impossible fight. They could have refused. They could have insisted on returning to Earth to warn the government. Instead, they chose to stand and fight. When Jake returned to the bridge, he found his crew ready for battle. Kevin's frequency device was installed and tested. Amy had planned their attack approach down to the smallest detail. Sam had the engines running perfectly. Lisa had learned enough of the alien language to understand their basic communications. Long-range sensors show the alien fleet 12 hours ahead of us, Amy reported. They're still maintaining formation and don't seem to know we're here. They're about to learn something about humans, Jake said. Take us in, but keep us hidden, as long as possible. The Defiance moved forward through space, one small ship carrying the hopes of all humanity. Behind them was safety and home. Ahead was an enemy that had conquered dozens of other species. But Jake Morrison and his crew were not like the other species the aliens had faced. They were human, and humans had a reputation for doing impossible things when their backs were against the wall. The battle for humanity's survival was about to begin. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the stars drift past the main viewing screen. Space looked peaceful out here, far from Earth and the busy shipping lanes. The small exploration ship had been traveling for 3 weeks now, checking empty star systems for anything unusual. Jake was 35 years old and had been in command of the Defiance for 2 years. He liked the quiet missions. Most of the time, they found nothing but empty space and dead planets. That was fine with him. The galaxy was big enough without looking for trouble. Captain, I'm getting some weird readings from the next system, said Lieutenant Amy Carter from her station. She was the ship's tactical officer, a sharp woman with quick eyes who never missed anything important. Jake walked over to look at her screen. Numbers and charts filled the display, but he could not make sense of most of it. What kind of weird? Energy signatures that don't match anything in our database. It's coming from the 4th planet in the system. The readings are really strong, sir. Chief Petty Officer Sam Rodriguez looked up from his engineering station. Could be a crashed ship or some kind of old technology. Might be worth checking out. Sam was the kind of engineer who could fix anything with spare parts and determination. His thick hands were always covered in grease, but Jake trusted him to keep the ship running no matter what happened. Set course for the system, Jake ordered. Let's take a look. The Defiance changed direction, its engines humming quietly. The ship was not big or powerful compared to military vessels, but it was fast and could go places the larger ships could not. Jake's crew of 12 people had been together for over a year now, and they worked well as a team. Corporal Lisa Park sat at the communications station, listening to radio signals from space. She was young, maybe 25, but she had good ears for picking up transmissions that other people missed. Captain, I'm hearing something strange on the long-range sensors. Strange how? It sounds like voices, but not human voices. The language is completely different from anything I've heard before. Dr. Kevin Hayes came onto the bridge carrying a coffee cup and looking curious. He was the ship's science officer, a thin man who studied alien life forms. So far, they had not found any living aliens, but Kevin kept hoping. Did someone say alien voices? He asked, setting down his coffee. Maybe, Lisa said. The signal is very weak, but it's definitely some kind of communication. It's coming from deeper in space, not from the planet we're heading toward. Jake felt a small chill run down his back. In all his years in space, he had never encountered real aliens. Humans had found evidence of old civilizations on dead worlds, but nothing alive. "Can you clean up the signal?" Lisa worked at her controls for several minutes. Slowly, the static cleared and strange sounds came through the speakers. The voices were deep and harsh, speaking in quick bursts like military commands. Kevin pulled out his translation computer and started recording everything. "This is incredible," he whispered. "Real alien communication. I need to analyze this right away." "How far away is the signal coming from?" Jake asked. "At least 50 light years," Lisa answered. "But Captain, there's something else. I'm picking up a lot of these signals, hundreds of different sources, all moving in the same direction." Amy checked her tactical screens. "If they're 50 light years away and we can still hear them, they must be using very powerful transmitters. That usually means military ships." Jake nodded slowly. A few alien ships might be traders or explorers, but hundreds of ships traveling together meant only one thing. It's a fleet. The bridge became very quiet. Everyone understood what that could mean for humanity. "Kevin, how long do you need to translate some of those messages?" Jake asked. "Give me 2 hours, maybe 3. The computer can find patterns in the language pretty quickly." "Do it! Amy, I want full sensor sweeps of the area. Look for anything that doesn't belong. Sam, check all our systems. If we need to run fast, I want to be ready." The crew went to work with new urgency. Jake stayed on the bridge, staring at the stars and thinking. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now it looked like they were about to get their answer. 3 hours later, Kevin returned to the bridge. His face was pale and his hands were shaking slightly. "Captain, you need to hear this." He played a recording of the alien voices, but now there were human words underneath. The translation computer had done its job. "Primary fleet will reach human territory in 4 standard cycles," the alien voice said. 500 attack vessels confirmed ready for planetary bombardment. No resistance expected from primitive species. Jake felt his blood turn cold. Primitive species. They're talking about us. Kevin nodded. "There's more. They call themselves the Zephyrian Empire. According to their messages, they've conquered dozens of other species. They think humans are weak and easy to defeat." "How many ships did they say?" Amy asked. 500, Kevin repeated. "All of them warships designed for attacking planets." Lisa looked up from her station. "Captain, I've been tracking their movement. If they maintain current speed, they'll reach our outer colonies in 4 days. Sam cursed under his breath. 4 days? The nearest human fleet is 3 weeks away at best. Jake sat down in his captain's chair, thinking hard. The Defiance was just one small ship with 12 people. They had some weapons, but nothing that could fight a real military force. Their job was to explore and study, not to fight wars. But those aliens were heading straight for human colonies, millions of innocent people who had no idea what was coming their way. "Kevin, do we know which colonies they'll hit first?" Jake asked. "Based on their course, probably the mining stations. In the Ross system, about 50,000 people live there." Jake closed his eyes. 50,000 people, including families with children. The aliens had called humans primitive and talked about planetary bombardment like it was nothing special. "Captain," Amy said quietly, "what are we going to do?" Jake opened his eyes and looked at his crew. They were all watching him, waiting for orders. These were good people who trusted him to make the right choice. He could order the ship to return to Earth immediately. They could warn the human government about the alien fleet. That was the smart thing to do, the safe thing to do. But by the time any help arrived, those colonies would be gone. Jake stood up and walked to the center of the bridge. "We're going to intercept that alien fleet." The bridge went silent again. Sam was the first to speak. Captain, with respect, that's suicide. One ship against 500. Maybe, Jake said. But those colonists don't have anyone else. We're the only human ship in range. We don't even know if our weapons can hurt their ships, Amy pointed out. Then we'll find out, Jake replied. Set course to intercept the alien fleet, maximum speed. Lisa stared at him. Sir, are you sure about this? Jake looked at each member of his crew. They were scared, but he could see determination growing in their eyes. These were the kind of people who became space explorers because they wanted to make a difference. I'm sure, he said. If we're going to die, we might as well. Die protecting something that matters. The ice wind howled across the frozen landscape of northern Alaska as Director Paul Harris walked down the endless white corridor. His footsteps echoed off the metal walls of the underground facility that officially didn't exist. Snow and ice covered the surface above, but 600 feet below ground, the most classified military installation on Earth hummed with quiet activity. Project Pandora's Box had been built during the worst days of the Third World War. When humanity faced extinction, desperate leaders had authorized the creation of weapons too dangerous for normal warfare. Not nuclear weapons or chemical bombs, but something far worse. They had created human weapons, people so changed and trained that they could destroy entire armies or civilizations with nothing but their minds and skills. Director Harris stopped, in front of a massive steel door marked with warning signs in 12 different languages. His hand shook slightly as he placed his palm on the scanner. A green light flashed, and the door slowly opened with a deep grinding sound. Inside was a circular chamber with 5 glass pods, arranged in a perfect circle. Each pod was the size of a small room, filled with a blue liquid that kept its occupant in perfect, suspended sleep. Thick cables and monitoring equipment surrounded each pod, constantly checking the vital signs of the people inside. These 5 people had volunteered for Project Pandora during the darkest days of human history. They had undergone procedures that changed their minds and bodies in ways that normal people couldn't understand. When the war ended, Earth's government had faced a terrible choice. They couldn't execute heroes who had saved humanity, but they also couldn't let such dangerous people walk free. So they had been put to sleep, kept in perfect preservation, until the day they might be needed again. That day had finally arrived. Begin wake-up sequence for all 5 pods, Director Harris said to the technicians working at the control panels. Sir, are you sure? Asked Dr. Helen Park, the facility's chief medical officer. Once we wake them up, there's no putting them back to sleep easily. These people were dangerous enough that we had to build this entire facility just to contain them. The Galactic Council has requested our most extreme assets, Director Harris replied. These 5 are the most extreme assets humanity has ever created. The first pod began to drain its blue liquid. Through the clearing glass, they could see a man in his 30s with short black hair and pale skin. Lieutenant Colonel Jake Morrison had once been a normal soldier until enemy torture during the Martian insurgency had broken his mind. Military doctors had rebuilt his psyche using experimental techniques, turning him into the most effective psychological warfare specialist in human history. Jake could look at an enemy and know exactly what they feared most. He could speak words that would make hardened soldiers throw down their weapons and run screaming. During the Battle of New Damascus, he had convinced an entire enemy division to surrender by broadcasting a single 10-minute speech over their communication systems. The glass door of his pod opened with a soft hiss. Jake's eyes opened, and he stepped out calmly, as if he had only been sleeping for a few hours instead of 20 years. Director Harris, Jake said in a quiet voice, I assume the situation is serious if you're waking us up. More serious than anything we've faced before, Director Harris replied. The second pod finished draining. Dr. Samantha Rivers emerged, her red hair still perfect despite years of suspended animation. She had been Earth's most brilliant biochemist until the day she had decided that the Geneva Conventions were just suggestions. Her biological weapons had ended 3 different conflicts by making it impossible for enemy forces to fight. During the siege of Europa Station, she had released an agent into the enemy air supply that made them incapable of feeling aggression for 72 hours. They had simply laid down their weapons and walked away from the battle. Other governments had tried to copy her work, but none of them understood the complex psychological and biological interactions that made her creations so effective. 20 years, 3 months, and 16 days, Dr. Rivers said, checking the date display on the wall. I trust my research notes are still secured? Everything is exactly as you left it, Director Harris assured her. The third pod opened to reveal Captain Alex Stone, a lean man with brown hair and scars covering his hands. Alex had been Earth's premier saboteur, capable of infiltrating any facility and turning its own systems against it. He could walk into an enemy base and within hours have their computers, power systems, and weapons all working for him instead of them. His most famous operation had been the destruction of the Titan Mining Consortium. He had spent 6 months working as a regular maintenance technician before activating a program that caused every automated system in their operation to malfunction simultaneously. The resulting chaos had crippled their entire military-industrial complex without firing a single shot. "How many security systems did you upgrade while I was sleeping?" Alex asked, looking around the chamber. 17 major overhauls, Director," Harris admitted. "I'll have them figured out by tomorrow," Alex said with a slight smile. The fourth pod revealed Commander Nina Cross, a woman with short blonde hair and muscles that showed even through her medical gown. Nina was perhaps the most feared human alive, an assassin so skilled that enemy leaders had nightmares about her even when she was on their side. She could infiltrate any building, eliminate any target, and escape without leaving evidence she had ever been there. During the corporate wars, she had ended a 6-month siege by sneaking into the enemy commander's bunker and killing him while he slept in a room guarded by 30 soldiers. None of the guards had seen her enter or leave. "How many targets this time?" Nina asked simply. "Unknown. Possibly thousands," Director Harris replied. "Good." I was getting bored. The final pod opened to reveal Major Ryan Clark, a massive man, with gray hair and old battle scars across his face and arms. Ryan was humanity's ultimate ground soldier, a man who had once held off an entire enemy army for 3 days, using nothing but guerrilla tactics and an unbreakable will to survive. His defense of Firebase Charlie had become legendary. When enemy forces surrounded the base with overwhelming numbers, Ryan had used the terrain, weather, and the enemy's own momentum against them. By the time reinforcements arrived, he had eliminated over 200 enemy soldiers and forced the rest to retreat. "What's the opposition like?" Ryan asked, stretching muscles that hadn't moved in 20 years. "Ancient machines that have consumed entire civilizations," Director Harris replied. "Machines," Ryan said thoughtfully. "Good. Machines follow patterns. Patterns can be exploited." Dr. Park ran medical scans on all 5 as they stood in the chamber. "Vital signs are perfect," she reported. "Neural activity is normal. They're all exactly as they were when we put them to sleep." "Not exactly," Director Harris said quietly. "They're older now, more experienced, and they've had 20 years to think about what they've done and what they might need to do." The 5 operatives looked at each other for the first time in decades. They had worked together during the worst conflicts in human history, and they knew each other better than family. Each one understood that being awakened meant the situation was beyond the capabilities of normal military forces. "Brief us," Jake said. "What are we fighting?" Director Harris activated a holographic display that showed the Devourer ships consuming planets. "The galaxy is being invaded by machines that have destroyed every civilization they've encountered. They adapt to Conventional weapons and tactics. The Galactic Council has asked for humanity's help. They asked for help, Dr. Rivers said with a cold smile. They're going to get it. Our ship is already being prepared, Director Harris continued. You'll have access to all current technology plus anything from your personal research files. The galaxy doesn't know what human warfare really looks like. They're about to learn. Alex studied the holographic images of the Devourer technology. Interesting. They process resources through centralized facilities. That's a weakness. Nina examined the ship designs. Large vessels with predictable movement patterns. Easy to infiltrate. Ryan analyzed the tactical reports. They rely on overwhelming force and adaptation. They won't expect sustained asymmetric warfare. Jake watched the psychological profiles of previous Devourer encounters. They operate as a collective. Collective minds can be manipulated if you know the right pressure points. Dr. Rivers reviewed the biological components of the Devourer technology. Even machines need organic elements for certain functions. Those elements can be targeted. Director Harris watched as the 5 most dangerous humans ever created began planning their assault on an enemy that had destroyed civilizations. The galaxy had asked for Earth's help against an impossible threat. They had no idea that Earth was about to show them what impossible really meant.